Greetings adventurers, welcome back once again to the Grassy Knoll. I, as always, am your Dungeon Master, Gary Cragax. So it's been a minute, huh? It's been a minute since we did this thing. Joe, what's been going on? Why has it been so long before the newest Grassy Knoll video? And let's talk about you instead. How are you doing? Is everything good? How are the kids? Everything good at home? Yeah? Fantastic. So we are going to do a quick one, hopefully. I'm not known for being succinct or particularly concise in anything I say. Let's see how this goes. We are going to talk a bit more, I guess, about combat in D&D. I'm already on record as stating that combat is not my favorite thing about Dungeons & Dragons. You can check out my last video on random encounters for a bit more detail on what I guess I have against combat. Just to reiterate, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. It's just fine. Like, it's fine. Anyway, regardless of how you feel about combat in D&D, whether you love it or you hate it, if you're a dungeon master, I bet there's two things that I've got that have been floating around in my brain that have probably happened to you at least one or two times. Number one, you've planned a combat encounter for your party with a single big monster that, based on their challenge rating, should be more than enough to give your party a run for their money, only for the fight to end within a couple of rounds without event or danger or peril because your monster rolled bad initiative or they were just overwhelmed by the action economy. Or, number two, being a shrewd and cunning Spielmeister who's very well aware of what havoc the action economy can cause, you have decided to match numbers with your party and then a bit extra. You are cobbling together a good old-fashioned mob for them to wade through. Except now, a single round of combat takes 45 minutes. Your paladin is nowhere to be seen. Your druid has started playing Raid Shadow Legends on their phone because they're just bored. Look at me. People playing mobile games at their D&D table. You know who you are. I see you. Stop it. Both of these things apply even more if you have more than 3 or 4 players in your party. I have 8 in mine. So yeah.
Get them moving, back up. Get over there, come on.
So, because balancing encounters in D&D is pretty darn difficult, to the extent that even Wizards of the Coast just slap challenge ratings on everything and it'll be fine, they'll work it out. And because it gets even more difficult if you have a larger party, I have once again, because this is YouTube, a 3-point list of things that you can do to address these kind of everything over too quick or this is taking forever encounters.
The moon gets big and bright, it's a supernatural delight. Everybody's dancing in the moonlight.
Okay, so let's get started. Number one, if you're doing a big mob encounter, group similar monsters together, kind of like how Warhammer works or like war games work, where you have like 4 or 5 kind of like people in one unit. They roll initiative as one monster and attack as one monster. So 4 goblins, each with their own attacks and initiatives and like 7 hit points, just becomes a monster with 28 hit points and then 4 attacks. It gets multi-attack and it has 4 attacks. Now, there are rules for mob combat on page 250 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, where the chances of one of the mob landing an attack are based on the monster's attack bonus, the target's AC, and the number of monsters in the group. This works well, especially at lower levels, but it doesn't mention how to apply things like pack tactics, which some of your best mob monsters like kobolds or direwolves have. And I also think that if you're running a mob combat, you want to have at least one round where the party's bombarded with a load of attacks so that they feel that pressure to take out as many enemies as they can. Which is why I prefer to give the mob at least the same number of attacks as monsters in the mob, so that there's still that potential for a lot of attacks to land as opposed to just one. What this is to me is just basically simplifying fractions. You are reducing the number of attacks that you have to roll or the number of initiative slots that you have to go to. And yeah, just kind of make things a bit more abstract. I guess, in places. When I started out playing D&D and running games, I used to try really hard to describe combat as extensively as I tried to describe everything else. And back in the day, the idea of grouping 4 distinct monsters together into just kind of like an amorphous monster blob would have been kind of unthinkable, because I'd do stuff like, this goblin has an eye patch, this goblin has a scar across their cheek, and like you want each creature to be their own sort of thing. But with the benefit of experience, I think one of the things that makes combat encounters engaging is the pace of them a bit more than the description. And I think going into like involved descriptions and stuff like that can distract from the pace of your combat a little bit and sort of slow stuff down. So things like just making everything a bit more abstract. You have 4 monsters, just make them 1 monster with a bunch of attacks and like combined hit points. And as they take damage, you can just like say a goblin drops, another goblin drops, and you still have this kind of like dynamic stuff is happening. Okay, that was pretty quick. Let's keep it up.
In the moonlight, everybody's feeling warm and right. It's such a fine and natural sight.
Number 2, if you have one big monster that you want the party to fight instead of like a group of monsters, give them some legendary actions and like legendary saves so that they can still pose a threat under an unbalanced action economy. I found this is most often a problem from level 3 to maybe like level 6 or 7, where your party's getting to grips with what they can accomplish in combat. They're getting strategies together and they've started to rack up a decent kill count. This is one of my issues with the CR system. The Dungeon Master Guide says a single monster with a challenge rating equal to the adventurer's level is by itself a fair challenge for a group of 4 characters. And maybe, yeah, possibly that's true. Jeffrey Rush says it best.
The code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
But I don't know, really? Really? One level 3 monster versus 4 level 3 party members? Just come on. Most of the fights that I have planned as per the DMG have been really one-sided in favor of the party. And I'm pretty sure it's not because those monsters don't have enough hit points. It's not because their attacks don't do enough damage.
It's the action economy, stupid!
There's a lot of talk and a lot of videos out there about how to make combat encounters more challenging, giving them a bigger pool of hit points or more damaging attacks. But I honestly think just something as easy as just giving your big monster a couple of legendary saves so that whoever has fireball or like hypnotic pattern or something, that doesn't just like nerf your encounter immediately. Just a couple of legendary saves like that, and the ability to move or attack a few times out of their turn is going to put way more pressure on than just making them tankier or increasing the chance of them like one-hit KOing a player.
One of the reasons I'm pretty sure I'm onto something here is that if you look at the monster manual, there's only one monster below CR 10 with legendary saves and actions, and it's a goddamn unicorn. Like, who wants to fight one of them? However, in a lot of modules and sourcebooks like Ghosts of Saltmarsh and Mythic Odysseys of Theros, you have lower level monsters with legendary saves and actions like Thousand Teeth the Giant Crocodile or the Fleecemane Lion from Theros. Monsters that alone can face a party in that level 3 to 7 bracket and still be threatening. Giving a monster 1, 2, or 3 legendary actions can be a really quick and easy way to give a monster instant boss monster potential. Imagine how scary a level 3 green hag could become if you just gave them the ability to become invisible and move at any point during the turn order.
Finally, number 3, let's talk about secondary forms.
Dancing will never find. Everybody dance and stay uptight. It's a supernatural life. Everybody's dancing in the...
So I guess I'll try and describe a bit of my design philosophy. I see combat encounters in D&D as puzzles to be solved through your party's tactics. Whether it's working out your monster's damage vulnerabilities, using your tankier players to draw damage while your rogue flanks for a sneak attack with advantage, or using casters to exert some control over the battlefield and go for like big hits from range. The best encounters are the ones that make your party think about the best course of action, rather than just piling on their biggest damage attacks and spells. Following from that, when you're fighting a big chunk with a lot of hit points, when your party's worked out the best course of action, and they've spent a round or two getting that done, the rest of the fight can just become a bit work-like a bit rinse and repeat, you know? Just going through the motions. Which is where your final form comes in. It gives your fight an extra puzzle to solve, like a secondary stage, another challenge to overcome, a prestige, if you will. My 8-player party had a really fun encounter recently with a walking house. And it wasn't Babalai Saga's hut, it was a different walking house. They're different things. I wasn't being a hack. Leave me alone. Be gone. Get out of my dungeon. The house had 4 big stone legs that would each be destroyed if they took a certain amount of damage, and that would reduce the house's speed and the number of attacks that it could make each turn. And the party pretty quickly realized that this is what was up. And watching them just go to work and kind of like alter their tactics to reflect this was really fun to see. It was just brilliant. Like, they did a really, really good job. And after a round or two, there was a wonky house wobbling around on 2 legs, and those legs had been webbed up and restrained by a Sawlock or Warsarer. We can't decide. Leave a comment. Sawlock or Warsarer? What do you think? If the combat had continued, I have no doubt that the party would have continued to mop up this house without much trouble or real threat of damage, which is fine, but it's just not the most exciting thing in the world. Cut to the house beginning to glow and crumble and transmogrify into a humanoid rock monster with all of its movement back and the ability to cast spells now. The game done changed. The party's back on its toes again. They're on the back foot and they're re-strategizing. A relatively enjoyable but uneventful mop-up got turned into a new puzzle to be solved. If this seems familiar to some of the D&D old heads, it's because it probably is. 4th edition had something very similar / exactly the same to this with its bloodied mechanic, where monsters gain new abilities or attacks once they drop to below half their hit points. 4th edition catches a lot of flack for mostly justified reasons, but there are some places where it does kind of shine, and most of those places are in the running of encounters and keeping them engaging. Like I said, I think D&D combat is fine, but I do think that cribbing a couple of tips and tricks from wargaming or other tabletop RPGs with deeper combat mechanics can be a pretty easy way to just spice up your encounters or make them a bit more nail-biting, which is fun and cool, gets the fun and cool stamp. That's going to be all she wrote today, guys. That was a quick one, huh? We got it done. I can do quick ones. Maybe this will make making videos a bit less intimidating. Maybe there'll be one more than every quarter year. Who knows? Please remember to like the video, subscribe to my channel, comment if anything struck you as interesting, or if you have any other stuff that you'd like to say. What do you think of these tips? What do you do to make combat exciting in your games? What are some war games or tabletop RPGs with fun combat mechanics that you'd like to see done in D&D? Also, please follow me on Twitter, which will be somewhere here. Contribute to my coffee page, which will also be somewhere here. This was nice. It was good to see you again. Hopefully the feeling is mutual. I will see you again with a video about another tabletop travail. No, a tabletop table. Join me next time on the Grassy Knoll, where I'll have another. Last time, this is the one. Join me next time on the Grassy Knoll, where I'll have another tabletop talking point for you. Goodbye.